I don't even know where to start with this one. Anthropic's officially started cutting people off for using their Claude Code plan with things that aren't Claude Code itself. On one hand, I saw this coming for a while, but on the other, it's just kind of a crappy move to play. And this sucks. If you're not already familiar, Anthropic put out these plans for Claude Code when people started using it heavily because their API prices are absurd. So you pay a flat monthly fee of $100 for the 5x plan or $200 for the 20x plan and get way more usage. The amount of usage you get is nuts. I wrote some scripts to keep track of how many tokens I was using and what it would cost over API usage. And it's easy to do thousands of dollars of API usage through these plans because Anthropic subsidizes them with their other sources of income, people using the plans and not paying and using the full value of it, etc. Since these plans have such generous limits, a lot of third-party builders have been implementing them in their own services. Things like OpenCode, things like Claudebot, which we'll talk about a bunch in a bit, all have been using your auth through Claude Code to take advantage of the token limits you're getting. So you're still paying Anthropic the money, you're just using the API key effectively in other apps. At least you were, until they locked it down. Anybody who is using their Claude Code plan through apps like OpenCode saw this error yesterday. This credential is only authorized for use with Claude Code and cannot be used for other API requests. Oh boy. I think this is a massive misplay that's going to keep burning the little bit of good faith Anthropic still has in the developer community, and I can't believe they did it, honestly. I have a lot to say about this, but I also am going to have much higher bills if I cancel my Anthropic plan here and use other apps. As such, we're going to do a quick word for today's sponsor. We're getting tired of hopping between tools all day. It's just frustrating. Maybe I have an idea for a feature, so I kick it off using Devin or Codex on my phone in the ChatGPT app. Then I go to my computer to see how it came out, and I see it's mostly working, but there's a few things missing. So then I have to grab the branch, pull it into my machine, spin up a different coding agent, lose all of the context and everything else going on, and hope that I can actually iterate. Imagine a world where it's all in sync. The job you started on your phone can be opened in your editor, your terminal, or the web, all however you choose, whenever you want. You can kick off a job in Slack and then finish it in VS Code. Wouldn't that be great? You'd probably have to give up a lot of control though, right? Not if you're using today's sponsor, Code. Fully open source, access to every model as soon as it drops because they literally just let you bring your own with OpenRouter. It's how I test new models already, but now it's going to be a lot more than that because the ability to kick off a job on my phone and finish it on my computer is just like mind-bogglingly cool. As they say, it doesn't matter where you're using their tools, VS Code, JetBrains, CLI, or kicking off the job via Slack, it doesn't care. It will keep your history and your context all in sync so that you can access it across all of these different platforms. Fully open source, so if there's anything you don't like, you can change it yourself, see how it works, and do what you need. If you're a big company trying to audit these things, it's a lot easier when they're fully open. And they even have a Slack integration in early access, which again, very excited about. Hey, friends at Kilo, can we get this? Thanks, guys. And they have so much other fun stuff coming. Like they just published their roadmap publicly on the site. Again, really open source down to like the roots of the company. They have an iOS and Android app coming, a full agentic engineering course and certification. Bring your own keys centralized so that all employees, all people on the same team have access to the same keys, as well as the same shared MCP servers, prompt libraries, and more. This makes a ton of sense because of how much you can do with their tools. They provide you with 5 default agent configurations, and you can add your own yourself. You can specify which models and which tools each of these has access to, and it makes it so much easier to control the way that you're using your AI. You're trying to get deeper in these tools, understand different models, and really control how they access your code base and do things. There's no better place to start than Kilo. Check them out now at soydev.link/Kilo and get $13.37 of credit if you use code Theo. Where do we even begin with this? I heard about this initially because Peter, who created Claudebot, posted the following error. I think he was one of the first people to see it because he was actively working on Claudebot when this happened. The error he saw was the LLM request rejected, the credentials only authorized for use with Claude Code and cannot be used for other API requests. You're not familiar with Claudebot, I've been playing with it a whole bunch. I actually have a Mac Mini set up in the corner here just to run Claudebot, so I can send messages via Telegram to this bot on my computer that runs Claude Code, or in my case, Codex, to do different things on my machine. It is super, super cool, but also uses a ton of tokens. Believe it or not, I actually think Claudebot is a significant portion of why this happened, even more so than something like OpenCode, because it's very token hungry. It burns through tokens, unlike almost anything else I've used before. It's super powerful, but it's very token hungry. And these plans work largely because you expect a large number of the users to not hit the usage limits. Like I've been paying the $200 a month for OpenAI's $200 tier for a while now, and have certainly not done $200 a month of inference in it. Apparently, the average person on that plan does cost OpenAI money, like they use more than they pay for. But regardless, the way that this works is economies of scale. I'll get into the economics and some numbers in a sec, but first I want to make sure anybody who thinks that this is an accident or unintentional realizes the truth here. Another open source CLI for doing code stuff got hit as well. And they actually had in the PR where they removed Claude Code support this comment. The patch removes Claude Code support following a request from Anthropic to align with their terms of service. This is very Anthropic. They do a lot of stuff like this. They're actually the single company that sent the most DMCAs out on GitHub because Anthropic was upset that they left the source code in through a source map in Claude Code, which is closed source, by the way. Reminder, just because there's a GitHub repo with a lot of stars does not mean Claude Code is open source. That is for a handful of pieces in community management. Claude Code itself is still closed source. They accidentally shipped source maps. People published the source maps that they published themselves and got DMCA'd for it. And countless DMCA requests have been sent by Anthropic on GitHub for this reason. They are not scared to hit people up and tell them that they're in violation of whatever and suppress what they're doing. It's almost Apple-like in that way. This is kind of how Anthropic operates. They want things done their way. They don't want you doing things your way. They want you to use the systems that they put in place to do things. They don't want you using other SDKs. They want you using theirs. They don't want you using other APIs. They want you using theirs. They don't want you using other CLI tools. They want you using theirs. Before we get into the long-term plans they have, I want to talk about the economics here. Let's say you have multiple different sub-tiers. You have the $20 a month tier, you have the $100 a month tier, and you have the $200 a month tier. You have these different tiers. Let's say the theoretical max that you can use in the $20 a month tier is $30. For the sake of making this digestible, let's say that $20 a month tier, you could use $30 max. They said it's 5x more for the $100 plan. So that would be $150 can be used on the $100 plan. And they said 20x more for the $200 a month. That's 20x more than the 30, so that's 600. That's wrong because I know you could use significantly more than that, but we will just go with it. So let's say this is the maximum you can use for each of these. Generally speaking, people on the cheaper plan are not going to come close to their limits. They're going to use significantly less. I have these numbers for T3 chat, and I would be surprised if Anthropic's were significantly worse in terms of the split. My guess is the average $20 a month users probably using $8 a month of usage average. And as you get to the higher tiers, the percentage that they're using is going to get higher. So the $100 a month tier is probably going to be closer to using $70 a month average. And we'll do the bad numbers. We'll assume the average $200 a month tier is using $300 a month average. So how do these economics work out? Let's just do easy numbers. We'll say we have 1,000 users on this tier. We'll say we have 100 users on this tier. And we'll say we have the same 100 on this tier. I'm too lazy to do all of this math. So I'm going to use a better chat app, T3 chat, switch to any model pretty much. We'll use, I don't know, just for fun, we'll use Sonnet. Do the math on these. Turn off search, we don't need it. So for the 1,000 users at 20 a month, average is $20,000 in, $8,000 of cost, $12,000 a month profit. The tier 2 users, $7,000 a month cost, $10,000 a month revenue, $3,000 of profit. And then the tier 3 users cost $10,000 a month. So the total, about 15 a month profit, 10 a month loss, you still make money. You're able to subsidize the cost of your heaviest users by going after the cheapest users. And this is a very, very common pattern. This is a big part of why these expensive tiers were introduced, because there are these power users, people like the ones you see on Twitter, people like the super smart devs that are just maxing out all of these things, people like Ben and me and all of these crazy hackers that love abusing these plans. They couldn't get by on the $20 a month plan, and they would cost thousands of dollars of API usage, which we can't justify. The point of the $200 a month plan is that it is a loss leader that also helps a lot with marketing. This is the thing I think a lot of people are missing. The point of this $200 a month tier isn't to make money for Anthropic. The point of this tier is to be marketing for Anthropic. This is here as a marketing expense that is subsidized by the money that has been invested in them, as well as the money being spent on people on these cheaper tiers, as well as people like me building services like T3 Chat that are paying the full API prices. This tier is so people like me will do free marketing for Anthropic, and it's clearly working. If we just look at the success of my recent videos about this stuff, specifically my I'm Addicted to Claude Code video, 122,000 plays in 3 to 4 days is really, really good for my channel. And it seems like people liked the video a lot. It would cost a lot of money to get 122,000 devs to hear about your thing and see it in such a positive light. They got that for way cheaper by subsidizing my $400 of usage by $200. The point of this is to be a marketing expense to funnel people into Anthropic's coddled walled garden so that they will continue spending money on Anthropic stuff. So they'll use the APIs and spend the money. So they'll have more of their company sign up that might not use as much. They benefit a lot from this as a marketing spend to funnel down the rest. But this is also the problem. If the point of this tier is to get more people to see and have visibility on Anthropic product, using this alongside Open Code or Claudebot or these other things that are nowhere near as directly tied to Anthropic does not benefit them in the ways they want. They're willing to take the loss on these tiers if it increases the likelihood that the average developer is locked into Anthropic stuff. They are purely doing this as a market spend, which means if it's not succeeding in their goal there, it isn't succeeding at all. The other issue is for smaller businesses or companies that don't have the ability to subsidize in the same way. Everybody from us with T3 Chat to companies like Open Code and even more so stuff like Cursor, they can't make the inference cheaper because they don't have access to the models. With open weight models, you can go buy some GPUs and spend some money up front to have more inference that you can then use alongside other things. But when the models are closed, you have to pay effectively whatever Anthropic decides. And if Anthropic decides you can't pay, they could do that too. In fact, XAI just got cut off, which is crazy. I have talked a lot of crap about the way Anthropic cuts people off from access to their stuff. Historically, people have pushed back on me saying, well, obviously OpenAI can't have access to Anthropic models. They're going to use the data to train. Or obviously Windsurf can't have access if they're going to be bought by OpenAI. They're going to use it to train. XAI wasn't using the models for training. They were using them for dev work internally through Cursor. And Anthropic cut them off. All XAI employees using Cursor no longer have access to Anthropic models. That's absurd. But this is kind of how Anthropic works. They want you to use their stuff the way that they intend. And if you use it in a way that they don't intend or as a person that they do not like, they cut you off. And this has been their pattern for a long time now. From DMCA and GitHub to rug pulling multiple companies using their models for traditional work or even just evals, to this type of shit, to now cutting off everybody for using their subplans for other things, it just sucks. It really does. Here's Tarek Sabin, who is an employee at Anthropic working on Claude Code. He's kind of their like DevRel person. Yesterday, we tightened our safeguards against spoofing the Claude Code harness after accounts were banned for triggering abuse filters from third-party harnesses using Claude subscriptions. They weren't really spoofing the Claude Code harness. They were getting an auth token and then using it, but sure. Third-party harnesses using Claude Code subscriptions create problems for users and are prohibited by our terms of service. They generate unusual traffic patterns without any of the usual telemetry that the Claude Code harness provides, making it really hard for us to help debug when they have questions about rate limit usage or account bans, and they don't have any other avenues for this support. The rate limit usage problem is because you obfuscate as much data as you can in it, and the account bans are bad because you're banning people as soon as you detect things. I think this is such a bullshit response here. This is absurd. Tarek, you're a friend. I appreciate you immensely, but you shouldn't let the legal team write these things. This is awful. You probably should have just not posted. This is why the supported way to use Claude in your own tools is via the API. We genuinely want people building on Claude, including other coding agents and harnesses, and we know developers have broad preferences for different tool ergonomics. If you're a maintainer of a third-party tool and want to chat about integration paths, my DMs are open. We've also heard it wasn't clear enough to end users that this was a terms of service violation, and that's on us. We'll make it clearer in the OAuth screen going forward. We've lifted all the bans that we're aware of that were caused by this issue. Please DM me or email if you were banned due to this and haven't been reinstated. That's one nice thing at the end. But this is bad. The problem here is that it is anti-competitive in the most literal sense. If you can get $600 to $4,000 of usage of Opus for $200 via Claude Code, or you could use a better harness, a thing that you prefer, something like Open Code or Cursor or something else, but the $200 gets you $200 of usage instead of $2,000 to $4,000 of usage, you don't use the better thing. It does not matter how much better a product you build. Anthropic, by having a better model, can force you to use a worse product by charging you more for using better products. It's the most traditional lock-in play I've seen in a long time. This is more transparent and more egregious than even like blue bubbles. It's absurd. Dax has a lot to say about this, as you would expect. It's their business. They have the right to enforce their terms however they like. One note on that, though, before I go further on what he had to say, it's actually not illegal at all. If you find a novel way to work around these types of limits, that is fully legal within US law. There have been previous cases, I forgot which one, but I've read a previous case where it was ruled outright that working around these things is totally fine, but it's just a cat and mouse game. They can try to restrict it, they can try and ban people, they can do whatever they want, but we can too by consuming the API in the ways that we choose. The terms of service can be whatever they want and they can ban you for it, but it's not illegal to do any of these things. They can't go after you with legalese. They can only go after you by banning you. Anyways, as Dax said, it's their business. They have the right to enforce their terms however they like. They're not obligated to provide completely open access to their services, but this is a hint at an underlying problem. Models aren't sticky, so it's not good enough that you're using Opus. They need you and your team to adopt their full stack of tooling so that it's hard to switch to a better model. This is the key. New great models come out constantly. It's honestly amazing we haven't had something better than Opus yet, considering how fast the stuff tends to move. I would expect to see some big releases from OpenAI in the next couple weeks at latest. The back and forth is going to continue as it always does. And if you get used to a tool like OpenCode and you can just swap models with a command, Anthropic goes from making however much money they are off of Opus to nothing really fast. The way that these things go up and down is absurd. I've seen it in our own data. A model like Gemini 3 Pro can go from being 30 to 40% of our usage on the Pro tier to like 5 to 10% in literally 2 to 3 days. It's nuts. So Anthropic's going at all angles to lock people in right now. But as Dax said, thankfully, not all LLM providers want to operate this way. You'll hear more about that soon. And hear more about that we certainly did. We are working with OpenAI to allow Codex users to benefit from their subscriptions directly within OpenCode. Huge. OpenAI has been very collaborative, more so than I ever would have imagined. Like, sure, their name's OpenAI, but they've actually been really good about this stuff in general. They open sourced their CLI immediately. I still have my issues with Codex, but it's good. It's not great, it's good. But you can use your subscriptions directly within OpenCode, and they are working to make sure OpenCode stays whitelisted as an official thing that you can work with. It was already possible before, but now it's going to be like made official, which is huge. And if you're wondering about Google and Gemini subscriptions, Google is too. They do not understand any of this well enough to make a statement, much less block you, so you're probably fine. But also, Gemini 3 is not a very good model to use for day-to-day work. Complain in the comments all you want. Nobody is seriously using that model for real work right now, even Google employees that I talk to. Anyways, as always, OpenCode ships really fast. The OpenCode OpenAI collab was done before I even finished streaming. So now you can use /connect in the latest version of OpenCode to connect your ChatGPT Pro or Plus subscription plans to OpenCode. That's the way to do it. And Adam's in chat. That tells you how fast and deep these guys are. Love it. All of that was bad, but here's where things get really, really dirty, in my opinion. You might not know this, but Anthropic ships their own Agent SDK. You can think of this as somewhat similar to like the AI SDK that Vercel publishes, with the obvious difference that it only works with Anthropic models, because of course it does. Also, unlike the Vercel AI SDK, it's fully closed source, so you cannot see the source code for this. That makes it much harder to use because models are much better when they have access to the source code and can see how a thing works. I'm sure that they have Claude.md and LLMs.texted their way to something mostly usable, but it's a lot better when you have source code access, which they do not give you here. But where it gets much dirtier is that you can authenticate this with your Claude Code sub. So if you build an application around Anthropic's closed source Agent SDK, and then you put this application out for people to use, they can sign in with their Anthropic sub and use the subsidized tokens. That is so dirty. This means that theoretically, if OpenCode was to rebuild the entire platform of what they've built around the closed source Anthropic SDK, you would be totally within terms of service to use your existing auth, because they don't want you to have access to other things. They don't want you building at an abstraction level that allows you to swap off of Anthropic, and they will gladly subsidize your costs as a marketing expense and as a lock-in expense to force you onto their platform. This is just the diapers.com play. If you're not already familiar, this was Amazon destroying a company, specifically around selling things for new parents. Amazon acquired the parent company of diapers.com for $545 million. They had been trying to acquire them before, but the price was too high because they were doing too much revenue. So their solution was to undercut by selling diapers at a steep loss, literally intentionally losing money to force the company to lose all of its market share so they could then buy them out and not have the competition at all anymore. That's what's happening here. Okay, apparently they don't even want you to use the Claude AI logins or rate limits for things built on the Claude Agent SDK. They claim you can auth with it, but then do that right after. Literally right here, they say, if you've already authenticated Claude Code by running Claude on your terminal, the SDK uses that auth automatically. Otherwise, you need an API key, but then they say here that. Although I haven't heard of anybody being booted that was using the Agents SDK, but I also don't know anybody using the Agent SDK, so hard to know. Yeah, this is a mess. I hate this. I want to support Anthropic. I have a lot of friends there. I have as many friends, if not more so, at Anthropic than I do at OpenAI. I really like the model. Hell, I even use Claude Code. I'm still not somebody who's made it all the way to Open Code. I'm mostly in Claude Code still. But I still hate this. I'm still considering canceling my sub at $200 a month, and I would encourage you rethink yours as well. This is the exact type of dirty play that has had me skeptical of this company for so long. I just hate this. It makes sense, though. It's the same company that cuts off access randomly, that DMCAs a ton of people on GitHub, that only likes to play the game the way that they choose. The moment you play differently than they want, they punish you for it. And I'm disappointed. Like, it's weird to me that the lab that is the most anti-developer and anti-open is somehow liked the most by developers. It is genuinely really frustrating. Anthropic has gotten away with this sentiment for so long because they had the best models for coding, and they still kind of do. GPT 5.2 is able to solve some problems Opus can't, but it's also much slower. The ergonomics of using it day-to-day just aren't as good. I find myself reaching for Opus still for coding, but I've never been more excited for a better model to drop because I don't want to support a company that operates this way. This just sucks. As I do in most of my videos like this, I would like to remind y'all at Anthropic that you still have time to fix this. I will give you a quick list of all of the things you have to do. Open source Claude Code immediately. Like, it is already a year later than it should be. That needs to be open sourced now. There's no reason to be hiding that source code. Reverse this decision. Make it easier for developers to apply to be officially blessed as an OAuth application that uses the rate limits in the existing subscription tiers. Donate a bunch of money to one of these open source solutions, ideally things like Open Code. Like, these products are essential and are helping elevate the success of the tools that you're trying to build in the world that we're building for. So support them, don't ostracize them, and cut the shit. I don't know how else to put it, but stop doing things like this. Have some outside counsel that doesn't work at Anthropic, that doesn't glaze y'all immensely, to tell you before a decision like this is going to happen, to say, hey, wait, this might piss off developers. We should rethink this. Your goodwill with devs is dying, and it's dying fast, and it's 100% your fault. And I am going to continue speaking out against this, even though I'm now technically an Anthropic investor because you guys bought Bun. I don't care. I'm going to give you shit when you act shitty. And a lot of other people are waking up to it too. I'm no longer the one Anthropic hater. You are turning most devs into haters because you're fucking up. Stop fucking up. It's that easy. You might feel special because your model's slightly better. You might feel special because you were early. You might feel special because you quit OpenAI and now you're competing with them. Cool. You're not fucking special. Get over your shit and fix it. That's all I have to say. You know what you're doing wrong. You know in your hearts that you're doing it wrong. Get over yourselves. It's not that hard. I've had to do it enough times myself. Fix your shit. Stop taking from the devs that you're already taking from to build your goddamn models, and behave a little bit. Just be a good faith player in the space. And if you're looking for examples on how to do that, take a look at OpenAI. I can't believe I'm actually saying that. I got nothing else for y'all. Just cut the shit. Peace, nerds.